All right, welcome back. You know, Monday to Friday, noon to 2 Eastern, I'm in the Corona Bunker Studios. I'm usually by myself. I'm lucky enough to have the longest-serving Republican congressman in Staten Island history join me right now, former Congressman Vito Fossella, my great friend. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good, John. How are you?
So, from noon to 2 every day, I sit over here, I have a drink, and then on Sundays, I'm lucky enough to get a seat at the table on a new radio show called Table Talk on AM 970, The Answer. He's the maestro. I join him and chime in, and we invite everybody to take a seat at the table and talk about politics and stuff like you do at your own kitchen table. He's great at that. You know, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So tune in. Okay. But he and I, you know, talk about a lot of things, and I say, Vito, I don't think people understand how important this packing the court issue is. And, you know, we've been talking about the contradictions, how Kamala and Joe, they're all over the map. They can't get a straight story out. And the one thing that we can't get a straight story on is, will you pack the court? And he says, I'll tell you after the election. So the advances Trump has made right now to get us a conservative majority on the court, just break down for people how quickly that could all be gone if these people get into office.
Well, if most people think, or a lot of people think that the number of court justices on the Supreme Court and other courts is enshrined in the Constitution. In fact, it's not. The only thing that the Constitution calls for is to allow Congress to establish a Supreme Court and then other courts that they deem appropriate, right? So it's not a constitutional issue. It's like anything else in terms as it relates to legislation. So what does that mean? If the Democrats are successful of capturing the presidency, the Senate, and the House, then they could easily introduce legislation to expand the number of justices that are allowed to sit on the Supreme Court, or anything else for that matter. And if they do away with the filibuster, as they say they want to do, then you can add another 10th, 11th, 12th, 15th, 117, doesn't matter. You can add as many justices as Congress wants.
So one of the kind of urban legends that people say, oh no, well they need 75% of the governors and they need all this and that. It's not a constitutional thing. You do not need to change the U.S. Constitution, amend it, to change the amount of justices on the court. It's a simple legislative vote.
Yeah, very simple. It's like raising your income tax. So, you know, the history goes back to like 1789, right? So Congress first established, I think it was 5 or 6 justices, and it sort of has fluctuated over the last 200 plus years, 5, 6, 7. Very often it coincided with, as the country grew, to the number of district courts. That's how they added justices to the Supreme Court. So 5 to 6, 5 to 7, 7 to ultimately to 10. And then it was reduced to 9, and it's been that way since 1869. So about 151 years of having 9 justices on the Supreme Court. The most probably controversial or noteworthy attempt to pack the court was Franklin Roosevelt. So he was elected, as we know, after the Great Depression, introduces and implements the New Deal. And what was happening on the Supreme Court was sort of saying, well, we really don't agree with some of this legislation. So they started knocking pieces of it down.
Sorry.
And as a result, going into 1937, Roosevelt then started saying, well, you know what? I'm going to add more justices to the Supreme Court to allow them to carry out what the people want, what I want. That never happened. Right? So the justices started to maybe rule more in favor of Roosevelt's legislation. Never happened. It was unpopular, shot down, and arguably one of the strongest presidents in U.S. history couldn't get it done. Back to today, it's clear that they want to dilute whatever effect Congress has been doing, this president has been doing, and now more importantly, the Supreme Court.
So let me ask you this. You were down in the swamp for quite some time, doing great things for our district here. You were the primary author of the 9/11 Victims Compensation Bill, which, you know, finally and is still taking care of the victims and families. So you knew how to work across the aisle. In your opinion, Joe Biden, every time they ask him about packing, he says, I'll tell you after the election. In your opinion, Joe Biden wins, the Democrats have the Senate and the House. What do you think House Resolution number 1 will be when the Congress is seated in January.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's to increase the number of justices on the Supreme Court from 9 to whatever. What's interesting is that there are senators, Democratic senators in the Senate who have come out against it. In fact, Bernie Sanders came out against it a few years ago. Ruth Bader Ginsburg had said it was, the revered late justice said she opposed increasing it. Why? Because it's not common sense. Elections, people want to go to the polls in a purest sort of way. They go every 2 years for the House, every, over 6-year period for the Senate, and they feel that, okay, I'm going to choose these people to implement, introduce, whatever, make legislation, make new laws. And then it's rendered null or void or it's good at the Supreme Court. So what's happening here? What's really happening? They're basically saying, we don't like the outcome of the last few years, so how are we going to undo that? Well, we're going to just add another 1, 2, 3 justices to the Supreme Court, and we'll get our way that way. So that's what's happening.
Right now, there are 9 justices, right?
Correct.
Assuming Amy Coney Barrett is seated. There will be 9. And for the most part, 6 appointed by conservative Republicans, 3 by liberal Democrats, or Democrats, let's call it, right? So 9... and we have a 6-3 advantage. So they would need a minimum of 4 to kill that advantage. So they could ostensibly, House Resolution number 1, add 4 justices to go to 13, and they have a 7-6 majority on the court.
They could add 400 if they wanted to.
But I'm saying, just as a first step, they can nullify 3 justices that Donald Trump seated in his first term in one flip of the pen.
Right, and what's different about, for example, Roosevelt made no secret of the fact that he wanted to stack the court, right? So I think you highlighted earlier something that's rather significant. Look, there are a lot of issues that I don't think are that important, especially at the federal level, but increasing the number of justices at the Supreme Court, something that hasn't been done 151 years, in order to get your sort of way, I think is significant. And yet the nominee for the Democratic Party is saying, nah, I'll let you know later. I don't know about that.
With almost any negotiation, if you ask a question, an honest broker would say yes or no. When you say, I'll let you know later, that's kind of like a punt, and that's not the answer you want.
Well, it comes the day after. If he is elected, he's going to say, well, you know what, I've come to my decision. I will be adding and supporting, number 17 new justices to the Supreme Court.
All right, Vito, thank you so much for stopping by, joining me for a little liquid lunch.
Always a pleasure.
Before we go, Jess, we have one clip, I believe, on Table Talk last week. I pressed Vito on this burgeoning problem in New York of leadership. That we have our mayor, Bill de Blasio. He's soon to be out of office. And I've been pressing this guy to think about it. I want you to hear what he said.
Changed world right now. In the past, I've been sort of very happy where I am, but all things have to be, frankly, on the table at this point in order to sort of look down into the abyss and say, we got to save this city. We really have to save New York City, and it's moving in the wrong direction. I can't say that more enough. It's a visceral feeling, and it's sad to see. My family's been in New York since the 1800s, and we haven't left. We're not planning on leaving, and we want to keep this city strong and keep it the greatest city in the world.
So, in closing, Vito, will you commit right now on Table Talk to throwing your hat in the ring?
If my arms were long enough, I'd reach across this table. Listen, everything's on the table. How about that?
Ooh,
everything's on the table.
That's our new slogan now. Sunday mornings, pull up a seat at the table because, according to Vito Fossella, everything is on the table, even the nuclear option.
Even the nuclear whatever that option. Means, yeah. The nuclear option is
the nuclear option.
The nuclear option is an option.